Good morning, Hygiene ma'am. Ma'am, audible ആണോ ma'am?
Audible ആണ്.
Okay.
Good morning, everyone. Yeah, so I hope I'm audible to everyone.
Yes.
Yes,
you are audible.
Sir, good morning. So we can start, I think, sir. Are you ready?
Yes, I'm ready.
Yeah. Good morning, one and all. Greetings from Kerala Highway Research Institute. It's a pleasant morning today. Hearty welcome from KHRA to this webinar session. And a topic that we have for today is the project management in government institutions. This is somewhat a different topic from the previous webinars that we had, which were all technical. But right now we are shifting our focus to a much different topic, but still very much relevant to our current scenario. That means the project management. So the session, I'll give an outline that the session will be of a total duration of 1 hour and 30 minutes. And the faculty will be taking us through a presentation, which would be for around 1 hour and 10 minutes. And that we can follow it with the Q&A session, which will be for about 20 minutes. So to formally welcome our faculty, introduce him, and to inaugurate this webinar, I call upon and welcome our Chief Engineer, PWD Design, Srimati Hygiene Albert. Over to you, ma'am, for formally inaugurating and to introducing our faculty. Ma'am.
Probably you're muted, ma'am. You have
Madam?
to unmute yourself.
Madam.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you are now audible.
Okay. Good morning, one and all. I am happy to see that the webinar series organized by KHRI is diversifying in topics, that is, topics outside the technical field. So far, the focus has been on the topics that are of technical prominence, especially in construction and infrastructure sectors. But today, we are assembled for a topic that requires utmost importance, that is the project management. As government servants, I feel that the topic is the need of the hour. While the concept of project management has been around for a while, the challenge has been in its interpretations and adoption to our government framework and work environment. Application of standard concepts requires a thorough understanding of the basics. Primarily a project work concept, active participation of the every stakeholder across the hierarchical structure of an organization is crucial to enhance the effectiveness of the project management. As we can see, government have now slowly moving to the activities in their mission or project mode. And this webinar is focusing on the good project management practices. For that, today we have our esteemed faculty, Lieutenant Colonel Retired L. Sri Harsha with us today. He's a seasoned professional who has practiced project management for over 30 years. And Sri Harsha have executed challenging projects on industrial verticals, construction, management in both private and government sectors. With civil engineering graduation, MBA and Masters in Business Law, 4 global certifications and over 30 papers published, he shares his rich experience by conducting trainings on various fields of management. So I welcome Lieutenant Colonel Sri Harsha to handle a webinar session today on the topic project management in government institutions. I am sure that this would be a very successful section. And today this will be only an introductory session, and we look forward to conduct more in-depth section based on this topic. I hope that we could utilize his vast experience and knowledge to have an interactive and informative session today. Without much formalities, I hand over to Sri Harsha. So you are welcome to take over the session. Thank you.
Thank you very much, ma'am, for the introduction. Is my screen visible to everybody?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you very much. And this is a very important topic, a very dear topic to me. And I have been involved with not only with the government sector, but also with the private sector in promoting and trying to see if I can influence people to adopt this concept of project management into their workplace and also into their personal lives to have a better quality of workmanship and a good quality life also. So today's exercise for the next 1 or 10 minutes is just going to be a very brief surface skimming of the topic to create some curiosity and interest in people to explore and experiment with this concept of project management. So, Mr. Winston Churchill, one of the top-notch, what you call public administrators, who has his own reputation and place in world history, has said that there is no worse mistake in public leadership than to hold out false hopes soon to be swept away. What he means is that you make promises, you make commitments, and if you do not deliver that, you lose your credibility. And in a government system, the executive is the face of the elected representatives. Whatever the elected representatives promise, we are the ones who actually go and execute that. And if we fail, the elected representatives also fail, but then the blame comes and rests exclusively with the executive, saying that we did not respond or reciprocate in time. So in that context, I think it's worthwhile for us to understand some basics of project management and see how we can adopt that. So today's session, I'm briefly just going to cover up in basically two main headings. One is I'll take you through a quick overview of what ground realities are today all over the country with respect to projects, and a brief overview of project management, just to give you an idea what subject this is. And of course, I will open the question house for discussions where we can take on the Q&A. Now, this data, what I'm going to show you is from Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation, Government of India, and this is across India. If you look at the data for the last 10 years, from 2009, or rather 2010 to 2020, the performance, there has been a cost escalation to the tune of 20%. And it has been it's been growing constantly. It's especially if we claim ourselves to be progressive, improving, the cost escalation percentage should have decreased, but then it is increasing day by day. What was 12% in 2009 has become 20%. What it translates into is that either 20% of public money, which is the taxpayers' money, is going waste, or if we had done better, we could have done 20% more work with the same amount of money which you have been spending. And this data is only for major projects, which is 10 crores and above, which the government has considered. So if you take the smaller projects into consideration, the percentage of cost escalation is going to be phenomenally high. And what are the reasons that they have quoted for the poor performance? Is poor scope definition, ineffective monitoring, gaps in stakeholder management, delayed decision making. Now, all this falls under the ambit of project management. If you had good project management practices, this situation would not have arisen, and all this list which we see here would not have been there. The other interesting part in the delayed part, which you see on the right side, is that the delays, out of 165 projects, 565 projects are delayed. That's close to about 33% projects are delayed. And the range of delays goes up to 324 months. You know, like if you look at it, probably a person who joined service would have retired by now if he had been on that particular project for its complete duration, and he would have handed over an incomplete project to his predecessor. And the cost overruns, the value of the cost overruns in 377 projects is 72.46%. Now, the other indicator of why project management is important is the arbitration status, which is a barometer of how we have actually managed our projects. Because we could not manage it properly, it's gone into litigation. Now, this data is what I've taken from the National Judicial Data Grid as of last week. And arbitration cases pending both at the national level, which includes all the states, and in Kerala specifically, are listed out, right? So if you look at it, there are some arbitration cases which are pending between 10 to 20 years. Apart from messing up the projects, we have not also been able to resolve and close this matter, right? Some projects, about 78 projects, we are not being able to close for 5 to 10 years. 78 projects we have not been able to close for almost a decade. So what I'm trying to highlight is that there is a necessity of understanding the concepts of project management and embracing them into our own functioning on a daily basis. The other one, what I want to show is the Cag report of 2021. This pertains exclusively to Kerala, and this is the Government of Kerala portal from where I've taken this data. These are the observations. I've not gone into the details. I'm sure people who review, sit and read the Cag reports will see what all is written in these headings. But if you look at the list, right from IT projects to energy projects, civil services, that is ration supply, that utilization and idling of paddy processing, then infrastructure projects, power projects, irrigation projects, there is a wide spectrum of projects where there have been adverse comments, and all this actually is only on account of poor project management and contract management. I'm not trying to find faults or anything. The system has been like this, but then there is a necessity or need, urgency for us to change ourselves and adopt good practices. That's the reason why I'm just showing this information to you, and we'll take it up during a discussion. So most of the time, my experience having been part of the government machinery and post my retirement, last 12 years, I've been working very closely with government departments, either as a consultant or giving techno-legal advices for arbitration matters. We feel that we have been doing this for years and this is the best practice. But let me assure you that it is not so. We have been making mistakes and we are not ready to accept. So first one is we have fixed ideas that this is the only best way to do it, which is wrong. Things have changed over the last years and there is a necessary for us to learn and adapt. This is another thing in the government machinery. Most of us get into a comfort zone. The moment I get into a job, I have the social security of having a job with me, whether I work or not. It's not easy to throw me out of the job. So I'll get my salary. I'll continue working this way. So, projects is a team effort. So everybody has to pull their weight together and then move forward. One person cannot make wonders. So it is a collective effort of the full team. So we need to orchestrate this learning process and also adapt to the new changes which are happening, which I'll be sharing with you in a couple of minutes from now from some of the global best practices. The other one is being from the government, we think we can bulldoze our way through and the contractors accept it for the time being. And then it ends up in the second list, which I showed you, that is arbitrations. Late after the project is over, they will take us to court and then we keep running behind them and wasting our time and energy, pulling out old documents, and our documentation is poor, so we don't have documents. So in court, it doesn't stand the test of law. So there are a whole lot of issues. Basically, what I want to highlight here is that we may be leaders, we may be pioneers, we may have been doing this both individually and collectively as an organization. We may have been doing this work for ages, but then we are susceptible for falling off. When the speed picks up, when we start doing mega projects, there will definitely be instances where we may fall off, but we should be prepared to climb back and ride and move on uninterrupted. So in that context, this is a PMI study, that is Project Management Institute, where they have done studies across the world. And I just picked up data related only to Asia Pacific, and India falls under the Asia Pacific region. So I have the global, and they're almost tallying. So people who follow good project management practices, 72% of them have said that they met their original goals. 63% were able to complete the project in budget within time. They did not have any less scope creep. Only 33% people felt less scope creep. Then 14% were deemed as failures. So what this implies is that good project management practices gives us a ray of hope to do things better than what we are doing today. Right. So with that, what I will do is now quickly take you through the principles of project management, give you a brief overview, and then head on to a discussion. So PMI is what we call as the Project Management Institute. It's a global body and it's the world's largest professional forum for the advocacy of project management, which has been established in 1969. They have presence in about 217 countries with a membership of about 6.86 lakhs. Now, what is the advantage of associating with PMI, which I can personally vouch for, is that you have access to members, and this is a pure voluntary organization, and they have multiple forums. So you post a problem, you will get 101 ways of solving your problems. You just have to choose which is relevant to you. So the main intent or objective of this forum is to network and share knowledge. So experiences, both good and bad, are shared here, which will tell us what to do and what not to do. So they also have set up standards, which are global benchmarks in project, program, and portfolio management. We'll be seeing what is project, program, and portfolios shortly from now. They have set up benchmarks which are used or recognized as global benchmarks by many countries across the world. In India also, we have adopted these things in a different format. I'll cover that subsequently. But then these 10 benchmarks have led to some certifications which PMI gives. They have 10 globally acknowledged certifications, and today, at least outside of India, and India also now it is picking up, where they're making these PMI certifications as accepted standards of professional competency of an individual, where if you hold these certifications, at least to a certain level, you are treated with respect and said that, yes, this gentleman or this lady knows what the profession is all about, and they accept the certifications as a benchmark of your professional hallmark. So this is a brief overview of PMI. I don't want to waste much time here about PMI. Those of you who are interested can visit www.pmi.org, which is the PMI website, and you'll get all details about the standards, the certifications, what are the prerequisites for the certification and all, and definitely we can also take it up during the Q&A. So now the concept or the philosophy of project management, how it has been evolving over a period of time, and it continues to evolve. It's not that PMI has done it once and it's etched in stone. No, they have been constantly evolving to keep up pace with what is happening. There is this, what they call as the project management body of knowledge. The book or the compendium which has been created does not carry any other title apart from, it's just called the body of knowledge. It encompasses and encapsulates the knowledge of project management professionals from across the world. If you open this book, close to over 20-25 pages runs into covering only the names of the contributors to this knowledge base. And so it's quite wide and broad-based, applicable to all industries uniformly. It's just not only for infrastructure or construction projects. It is applicable to IT projects. It's applicable to legal context, HR context, government administration, including your own daily lives. Now, how was this model evolved? Initially, they started with the basic framework which was there in management. That is what we call as the PODC, plan, do, act, check. And then they came into 5 processes, which we are all familiar with: initiate, plan, execute, monitor and control, and close. And then over a period of time, they started having what we call the knowledge area concepts. They grouped these domains of project management into 10 knowledge areas and then into 42 sub-knowledge areas, which they put them into process groups and all that. And today, the latest trend is that they shifted from all this into from processes to principles. And they have 3 domains. One is the people, where people competency, people knowledge base, people experience are all essential for good project management. And then good processes, which is an organizational responsibility. And of course, the business environment in which we operate, because today geographical boundaries have gone, liberalization has come in, multinational companies come and work in all parts of the world, including India. So we should be aware of the business practices, because when you enter into contract with global companies, as per the principles of the World Trade Organization and other world forums, you have to comply with international standards. You can't say that your Indian Contract Act is going to be the what you call binding act on which the contracts will be framed. You may have to adopt. So it's essential for us to understand the business environment. And then they also, when you say projects, finally it is what value it is adding to the whole system, and you should have agility to adapt to the changing scenarios and changing conditions, the dynamics of the market, and customize your processes and people skills to meet that. So the point what I want to drive home here is this PMBOK, what we call, was first commissioned in 1996, and close to about 20 years down the line, it has already undergone seven editions. Today we are in the 7th edition. So even PMI on a global level is adopting these knowledge of this knowledge base to be in tune and sync with the business environment of the current times. So that's why it is considered as one of the best practices or benchmarks in project management. And I have been using this since 1999, so I can very confidently vouch that this is a good standard. And I have been able to manage my projects more efficiently, though I won't say perfectly, but more efficiently using these principles. So I would urge each one of you to just go and visit and have a look at it, and then decide for yourself as to what is good and what is bad. So having said this, I'll just take you through a brief introduction to certain basic terminologies which we'll be using in the course of our discussion, and is also essential for you to understand the framework of project management and project governance. The first one is the project, which is called as a temporary endeavor, which is undertaken to create a unique product, service, or result. And what do they mean by temporary? It has a definite start date and an end date. Now, when you say start date and end date, or a duration, what we refer to as duration in our regular day-to-day life, it is not necessary that the duration has to, there is no timeline fixed. It could be for a short duration, it could be for a day, it could be for a couple of months, or it could even be for 8 to 10 years, like how we have our nuclear projects and the space projects, which extends over extended period of time. But then the basic point is that they should have a start date and an end date, and then it should be something different from what we have done earlier. Now, this is where that understanding is very, very critical, because in government sector, we feel that we have been doing roads or buildings since ages. Mine is a road division, so I am doing it correctly. No, the uniqueness is something what has not been done earlier. Probably the earlier roads, what you have done was within city limits. Now you have to go and do it in mountainous terrain. Now you have to go and do it in some area which is waterlogged. So these things bring in a different set of challenges. And when studies have been done why projects have failed, one of the main reasons which has been identified is that people fail to acknowledge that each project is unique. It is not a template of the previous one which you have done. The cut, copy, paste system will not work when you do projects, which is a general tendency in government projects. We feel that we have been doing road projects, pick up the same contract, just change some features, basic nomenclatures and conditions here and there, and it will work. It will definitely not work. You have to customize that to the ground conditions in which you are going to actually execute the project. So that understanding of the uniqueness is different. Next one is, it is slowly progressive elaboration. Sometimes, for example, when you have to do highways, you start with, say, a single lane, then you move into double lane, then you move into 3 lanes and 8 lanes and 10 lanes, and then you keep expanding. But then the point is, at some point of time, I have to take cognizance of what is my final terminal objective, and then accordingly plan my work, right? And most important, it requires the efforts of multiple teams, which needs to be coordinated, and this coordination has to be done by the project team, and nobody else will do it for you. I'm sure all of you at some point in time in your own projects or in your life work experience would have encountered situations where the coordination has been the weak link because another agency had not been told. So, for example, shifting of services. Your laying of water supply pipelines or sewage pipelines or underground cables or doing the road work has been adversely affected because of poor coordination. So, point to note. And project management is defined as the application of knowledge, skills, tools, and techniques to project activities. Now, the point you have to take note of is it's a combination of knowledge and skills. Now, what is knowledge? Knowledge is the theoretical aspect of a subject, but the skill is how you actually apply that at ground. Simple thing, we know that what is the knowledge when we want to do surveying, that we have to take the contour lines. And in the contract, probably somebody would have said 10-meter blocks. But when you actually go on ground, the person who's taking the survey levels, block levels, if he sees the profile of the ground and he feels that 10 meters is too vast, he should have the skill and the ability to say that, okay, I will take in this particular sector, I will take levels every meter or every half meter because of the following reasons. So how you translate knowledge to actions is what is called as skills. And the point is, since it's a team effort, it is not necessary that knowledge and skills have to rest in the same person. As one progresses in professional career, the skill part will reduce because you will not be doing the work, but the knowledge has to increase in a commensurate manner. People below you will have the skills. And if you don't have the skills, as a leader of the team, you will have to take the responsibility of ensuring that people acquire skills either through training, workshops, or seminars, whatever it is. But then you have to ensure that you have people with the right skills as part of your team. And just to give you a small example about this mixture of knowledge and skills, is about 15-20 years when this concept of automation started and computers were issued to a lot of offices. Everybody had the knowledge why automation is necessary, why it is necessary to have IT systems and all that. But then because we didn't have people who were trained or competent enough to handle the computer system, for years together, there were a lot of computers which were in packed boxes in many government offices, and they were still using the age-old typewriter. People had not been upgraded to use a computer. They were still comfortable with using typewriters. Even today, when you go to a lot of court complexes, you'll find people using typewriters. I'm not saying using typewriter is bad. All I'm saying is, as part of a project, you should decide what is the right combination of knowledge and skills, whether it is in the same person, whether it is in different persons, how to bring these people on board. All this is basics of good project management. The next one is the programs. Now, what is a program? Again, it's a group of related projects, sub-programs and program activities, which is managed in a coordinated way to obtain benefits. I'll just give you a small example. If you have a city infrastructure capacity or augmentation initiative, you will have multiple projects. It could be sewage lines, water supply, electricity, road beautifications, other infrastructures. My own experience, because we didn't look at all these activities as a program when we were doing the Visakhapatnam Smart City project, the work of excavation, backfilling, and relaying of roads was given to all four contractors who sewage, water supply, electricity and road work. But then when we started applying the templates of program management, we realized that we can get a lot of benefits if we coordinate the activities of these three projects in a very systemized and synchronized manner. First, let the sewage guy go in, then the water supply guy go in, and then the electrical guy go in, and then last the road work comes in. You will not believe it, when we are doing the Visakhapatnam Smart City project, the savings between all these 4 projects was close to about 20-25% of the overall value of the projects, which is a considerable amount. So this understanding of program management, program management is very, very essential at a senior level. That is at a superintendent engineers level, chief engineers level, or you say joint director or a director in any of the other ministries and departments. Those levels, you people will have to start looking at it from a program perspective rather than as a project perspective. Say, for example, if you have, ration supply, milk supply to children, uniform distribution, textbook distribution, rather than having 10 different agencies for distribution, if you can coordinate related activities and make one agency responsible for distribution, you do have a considerable amount of cost savings by doing it in this manner. So this is again a very basic principle of the concept of project management. And then of course, project management is the same thing, but the skill sets that are needed is slightly higher than what a project manager would have, because here you would like to, the program managers should have an understanding of the legal environment, financial management, how capitals, project funding is done, how borrowings are done, how the structuring of capital funds are done. All these things come into play as a program manager. Then the next one in the hierarchy is what we call as the portfolios. Now this is at the highest level in a government machinery, which I'll just be showing you a small graphical representation. But then a portfolio is a grouping of projects, programs, and subsidiary activities to attain strategic objectives. And in the current scenario, what I can think of is for the COVID, the agenda to control COVID. Under control, you had prevention and you also had treatment for patients. Right? A set of activities which has its own set of projects like education, vaccination schemes, vaccination production, vaccination storage, vaccination movement itself from place of manufacturing to different states. Everything becomes a project under a program of prevention of COVID. The other one was the treatment part, where you had to set up hospital networks, you had to coordinate the supply of medicine, coordinate the supply of oxygen, ventilators. So everything was a project or a program. So in that context, what happens is this is how the whole system actually evolves, right? And portfolio management is generally done at the organization level, and in the government context, it's at the ministries or at the department levels that we have what we should explore is seeing how we can call this and organize this into portfolios so that it is managed better. Now, this is how a hierarchical representation of the portfolios, programs, and projects happens. You have a portfolio, under that you would have various sub-portfolios, then you would have programs and then projects, and then under the program you'll have projects, sub-programs, and other ones. Now, just a quick theoretical summary of what are the differentiating factors between projects, programs, and portfolios. The important one for us is probably the planning one, as to how planning is done, and the management part. So in portfolio, we focus more on the goals, how it is communicated, and the process which actually guide the implementation of these portfolios and programs. Whereas in the projects, it's a very high level progressive planning that we do, where we get into details of what exactly needs to be done. When should the medicine start from the production facility, and when should it reach the terminal final point, where storage facilities need to be coordinated so that it is ready to receive the vaccinations when it reaches the city or the district hospital or wherever it is supposed to be. So like that, this is how, these are those small differentiating factors between projects, programs, and portfolios. Now, in a government mechanism, how does it work? Firstly, you have the legislative body, which is the final authority on what should happen. For that, under that, you have the Council of Ministers, who are actually what we call as the governing council. In a business organization, they are something akin to the governing council or the management board. They have the responsibility of executing or implementing the programs, portfolios, and strategies and initiatives approved by the legislative body. Under them, you have the ministries, who are the executives and the departments, and also you have some autonomous institutions and bodies. Now, all of them have to work in a very synchronized manner. So what happens in the legislative body? They have visions, missions, and high-level strategies. Okay. So like, for example, if they want to do flood control, they say we should look at flood control initiatives in the state of Kerala. Now, at a very high level, it is approved, but then it actually comes down to the various ministries and the departments and the autonomous institutions which have been created for this particular purpose to study the necessity of flood protection measures in each district, which is typical to that particular district. What happens in district of Trivandrum may not be the same which will happen in Ernakulam. It will be different. So it then becomes a portfolio program or a project, and sometimes they'll also be what we call as operations, which is the day-to-day maintenance of the assets that have been created. Right. So this is how the interplay of the portfolio. So there is a strategy. From the strategy comes out the portfolio, which are actually the value decisions. What is the final outcome of this portfolio? From that flows out the programs and results, which are results and benefits. There is a continuous feedback mechanism between these two elements, because we have to keep adjusting based on the progress made, based on the market dynamics, the change in work environment, the necessity. So there is a complete interflow of information between these two dimensions. And then finally it transitions into operations, where it is the business value realization, where an impact of the business and the value performance analysis is done, and then adjustments are done. So this is at a very high level for us to understand before we dive deep into what is project management, which is the core subject of today's discussion. So I just wanted to set up the context so that people from different hierarchical levels today who are attending in the government missionary should appreciate what is relevant to them and how they can influence somebody on top and somebody below. So a program manager will have to influence the portfolio manager and the project manager. The project manager will have to influence the program manager and possibly the portfolio manager. So you have to have an understanding of the overall strategy. What is the value propositions which this strategy is supposed to give? And then how is my project adding value to this strategy or the value decision which is being taken? So for example, if you are the executive engineer of a division which is doing one section of a national highway, you should understand what is the full stretch of the national highway, from which end to which end it is going, how is it being done, in what all segments do we have the 6-lane land acquired for 6 lanes, why have I been given only 2 lanes while the project is actually 6 lanes, what will happen subsequently when the land is acquired, am I preparing for that, so that there is no repetition of work which needs to be done. So we have to keep looking at it from that perspective. We cannot live in a very isolated small world, like how, for the horses, they have those eye shades, blinkers, what they call, which they put, and you keep looking only forward. No, that era is gone. We have to start looking left and right and understand and contribute to that whole process, because you never know, at some point of time in the government machinery, you may become a part of the decision making at the next level, and then you may end up cursing yourself. Why did I think of this earlier? And you are landed up in the same mess which you had created earlier. There have been instances also. So now, what is the importance of project management? What I wanted to highlight is that projects is the basic building block of the project program portfolio hierarchy. So to get your portfolios correct and your programs correct, the projects have to be executed correctly. If the project fails, the program and portfolios are bound to fail. So it is very, very critical that irrespective of which level you are in the government machinery or in the hierarchy, you have to devote some time to understand the projects and review the project management process and the efficiency of the project management process. If you do not do that, you will fail as a program manager or a portfolio manager at whichever level you are in the hierarchy. The other point what I want to highlight here is that in the hierarchy, when you understand this, you have to take up a proactive role in supporting the project managers and the project management teams with all support that they need to ensure that their projects succeed. If they don't succeed, bound to fail. Right. So I'll just end this small dialogue here, saying that good project management practices is the key for the entire system. So if the government has to be successful, the projects have to be successful. You may implement any amount of programs, free ration supply, free education system, free electricity system, all this. But as you saw in your CAG reports, if the power generation is not 100% correct, the transmission lines and the distribution lines become redundant. If your distribution network is not done completely, the last mile connectivity will not be there. So the power generation becomes surplus and it goes waste. So the efforts invested in power generation, power transmission gets nullified or negated because of a poor distribution system. And as part of the project, if you had revenue generation as one of the results of the project, if you do not address how the revenue will be generated, metering to be done, the strategy, the pricing strategy, everything has to be decided well in advance. If that is not done in time, you again have a problem. Your projects, your programs, your portfolios of free power supply or, uninterrupted power supply, which hinges on revenue also, revenue generation, goes for a toss. So I would still like to stress on the fact that projects and project management is the key result. Whichever level you are, you have to concentrate on your projects. There are instances where people that projects are too trivial because they're in a very senior positions. But then at the end of the day, that is the one which is going to be the cause of your downfall. I have had in my training programs chief engineers who have admitted in writing that probably if I knew this earlier, I could have done much better, because they did not understand the importance of projects and project management. So time and again, I am stressing, and even today, though I have a fancy title of the chief operating officer of a very big construction company, where I'm supposed to look at the strategy and the high level decision makings and the growth of the company, I spend more than 50% of time with my project teams, because if they don't perform well, if they don't deliver projects in time, my market reputation goes down. My next business takes a hit because of the negative reputation that we are earning because of a poor project, which is not being done in the correct manner on ground. Matter ends there. So now when you look at this portfolio management, portfolio program and project hierarchy, the perspective matters. Sponsor or owner, say for example, as a minister, they are not interested in the planning, the contracting strategy, the land acquisition and all. For them, the road has to be constructed. But then how do you educate them is the challenge. That is where the teamwork comes into play, where right from the executive engineer level to the chief engineer level, will all have to speak the same language, which has to be communicated to your secretary, who will then facilitate a meeting with the minister and communicate your understandings. Otherwise, you're going to have challenges. Similarly, when you're an executive, you're a manager, when you're an executor of the project, and in government systems, you also go into audits, right? So when you go in for audit, it's not about being friendly or supportive or sympathizing with somebody's shortcomings. your objective should be, how do I improve the system, rather than pinpointing faults or errors or omissions to a particular and attributing that to a particular individual. I would urge, if you can highlight that or communicate in a manner which highlights the deficiencies in the processes and the systems. And because of the conditions in which a particular individual is, these errors have happened, probably you will be more effective in improving the system rather than making one person individual or responsible for the lapses, and then, putting people on the back foot, saying that nobody will want to take risk. Today, in reality, government systems, nobody wants to take risk because they feel that by taking risk, they are subjected to harassment because mistakes are bound to happen. So the perspective matters at what level you are operating. And the most important thing here is the government versus management concepts. The governance is more of how the framework is set up, and the management is how this framework is interpreted and implemented on ground. Say, for example, procurement process, sometimes you have this, Transparency Act and other things, or even the Constitution, which says that every person has to be given a right to practice whatever profession he wants to practice it. A lot of contractors have gone to court. Whereas if you have some good effective management practices, you can actually curtail the participation of these people by having good guidelines written, or pre-qualification conditions, which is fair enough and justifies the necessity of inclusion or exclusion of a group of stakeholders into the system. So it's like that. What I want to highlight is that governance is at a very high level. It is not what you call directive. It just gives you a framework. Say, for example, in the education system, if we take up the governance framework, would be something like that. We should have an evaluation system at the end of every quarter or end of every half year and an annually basis to evaluate the performance of the students before you promote them to the next class. That will be a very general guideline. Now, management part comes in how you do the evaluation, whether you want to have monthly tests, you want to have weekly tests, you want to have continuous evaluation, whether how much of practicals you want to have, how much of theoretical you want to have, is part of management. So the school teachers, along with the deputy directors of education, the school teachers, the principals, and various stakeholders will have to put their head together and see how we want to have an evaluation system. It is not necessary that what evaluation system you have for a 10th standard or a 12th standard or a 7th standard student should be the same for a 5th standard or a primary school child. It could be a totally different mechanism of evaluation, right? So like that, you should have different mechanics. That is the role of management. Now, in a government hierarchy, what happens, irrespective of your designations as chief engineer or superintendent engineer or director or deputy director or whatever supervisor, you will be shuffling between governance and management. Sometimes you're part of the governance team, sometimes you're part of the management team. You should know this clear distinction between these two facets of management and see how you can contribute to make it more effective. So now, how do projects evolve? Projects basically evolve because of there is a necessary, especially I'm speaking only with reference to the government context, or even in business, it's the same. There's no difference. There is a necessity for somebody It could be physical necessity, there could be social necessity, there could be economical, it could be organizational, and it could be environmental necessities also. So what happens now? There could be problems, there could be public requirements, there could be opportunities which you want to capitalize on. There could be strategic plans as part of nation building. Then there could be natural disasters. All these things give the need to implement or commission a project. Unfortunately, what happens? Because of scarcity of resources, you have to prioritize the projects. And then based on the priorities, the projects are then taken up and assigned to different teams to execute. So now what happens? Project management framework. I'll just give you a small example of how this has been organized by PMI, which is again acknowledged worldwide as one of the best practices. There are a couple of other frameworks, but then the extent to which this framework has been tested is very, very huge. To which extent the other frameworks have not been tested, and this is all documented and available for public scrutiny. So this subject is a huge subject. Today what we are doing is just scratching the surface of this subject. You have to go and do a bit of deep dive to understand this in detail. So right from 3 to 4 days workshops, you have a 2 years masters in project management itself, where they take you through the different domains in a very exhaustive manner. Depending on your time and your interest, I would urge each one of you to see how much time you can invest. So what PMI has done is that they have organized the concept or the activities of project into 10 knowledge areas, which is scope, time, cost, quality, human resource, the risk element, the stakeholders, the communication, and the procurement, and tied it up with what is called as the project integration, which is the 10th knowledge area. And they encompass this with what they call the principles of professional responsibility and ethics. Now, what it means is that the moment you think of a project, there has to be a scope of a project. That is what needs to be done. In how much time it needs to be done. What is the budget that it is allotted? What is the quality standards that it has to be compliant to? What are the skill sets that are made? What are the risks that are associated with this project? So on and so forth. So this is a very detailed and exhaustive. So under each one, they have various other sub processes. Like for under scope, they have 5 different activities, right from collecting requirements to define scope, create a WBS, verify scope, and control scope. So like that, there are different processes. So it's a very vast subject for us to understand, but it is actually very, very relevant and helps you translate the intent of your project or the outcomes and realize it can be managed better. Today, there is what the new concept, new development, what is called as agile. The concept of agile and disciplined agile, which is basically what it means is that we have to be adaptive to the conditions around us and accordingly play up our cards and the project program. So for example, you have a highway project or a vaccination program. Possibly the places where accessibility is good, you can plan for trucks and small vehicles to go and deliver the vaccinations, take the vaccination teams, the doctor teams, set up camps and all that. But then in remote areas where accessibility is a challenge, or due to natural calamities like floods, landslides and all, accessibility has been cut out. What these principles of agile preaches is that you should be flexible enough to accommodate deviations, arrange for a small helicopter or something to ferry these people to that location, conduct the vaccination camp and come back. Why? Because it is necessary that the project is 100% complete. You cannot give a report that these areas are still remaining and we will not be able to give them vaccination till this condition improves. What if there is a wave there or people get infected and then the cases increase there? Then your whole effort in the remaining areas where you have been doing vaccinations actually gets compromised. So this new principles of agile is a new concept which has come in a couple of years back, and now it has been made elementary or basics to good project management framework, where they say that project managers have to be agile to the scope of work. And I think this concept we are applying in some places. For example, if you see your road network, wherever land acquisition has become a challenge, you will see that the road width is only restricted to say 2 lanes or 4 lanes, while at the back end and at the front end, it could be 8 lane or 10 lane wherever land acquisition has happened. So rather than holding up the entire project, what they did, wherever land acquisition has been happened, let us complete the work completely. And wherever it is not happened, we keep slowly expanding our footprint so that when the problem in that small pocket gets isolated, when the land is acquired or when the water channel is diverted and the land becomes compatible for working, we will then take up the work. So the flexibility is built in both in the execution and in the management part. So that is how these principles of agile work in this concept, but that has become mandatory. Now, what is the problem of it? The project manager or the project management team is balancing the constraints of scope, cost and time and maintaining quality. And this is very, very relevant to the government sector. This is also called as the triple constraint theorem. Why this is relevant? Project starts with an initial scope of, say, for example, just laying a water pipeline up to a certain point. There is a demand from other villages where people say you are laying up to this point. Can you extend it another 2 kilometers? Now the question is, do you combine that with this current project or would you like to take it up as a new project? Both ways you have your own set of challenges. Whether you increase the scope of the current project of laying 10 kilometers of pipeline to 12 kilometers or maintaining the sanctity of the 10-kilometer pipeline and doing the 2 kilometers a new project, they have their own different set of challenges. But the point to note here is the moment you decide to increase the scope from 10 kilometers to 12 kilometers, you are duty bound to explore what is the time impact and what is the cost impact. If you compromise between these three elements, you reduce the scope or the time or do not provide sufficient budget commensurate with that, the quality is bound to suffer. And this has been tested by innumerable studies all over the world. The moment one element of these three is compromised, quality takes a hit. And in government projects where there is a lot of public scrutiny, quality is the first aspect which is checked and commented upon and becomes the what you call point of eruption for future problems for the executives and the management team. So to avoid that, you have to see how to balance scope, cost and time. For example, in your contracts, you say that you give the contractor an extension of time without cost escalation. That is contrary to the legal provisions of law. So you end up in arbitration. And when you go to court, you end up paying the money. So if you are aware of the legal provisions and at what level, not at the project team level, at the program level or at the portfolio level, where the governance team sits, if they explore and study the legal provisions, probably this mistake would not have happened. So I can give you innumerable examples like this, but then the point here is that these are the three elements and this is very, very critical. Keep this in mind in your whenever future projects. If somebody wants to increase the scope or de-scope some amount of work, you'll have to see what time you have to cut out, what cost you de-scope some element of work, but you continue to give the same time, you are again lost out on the value which you should have got earlier. So this is how the whole system works. Now, what are the advantages of good project management? First one is getting things done in the correct manner on time within the budget, right? Again, everything are very basic, nothing much for me to highlight. But then one important factor of good project management is that you are able to anticipate the problems well ahead of time and be prepared to address that when it comes, because of the risk management aspect and the stakeholder management, which is two critical knowledge areas of good project management. So you're able to address that rather than bringing your project to a grinding halt when you hit a bottleneck. And of course, the last one, again, you have standardized reports, templates, terminologies which people use and understand. These are all get standardized because of good project management. Now, what are the factors which influence good project management or success of projects. One is the executive management support. Why I kept this on the top? Because I was told that the audience today would be from different hierarchies in the government mechanism. So each one has a role to play in supporting the project management teams on ground, because that is the very basic building block of your programs and portfolios. So the executive has to take interest, spend time with your project teams to understand what are their problems, rather than just going and doing an audit and making adverse comments and leaving the place. You should be more supportive in terms of giving them ideas, suggestions on how to circumvent the problems that they are facing, what is the paperwork that needs to be done. If you have to escalate the matter along the hierarchy to the secretaries and ministers for getting approvals, the role and support of the executive management becomes very, very critical. User involvement, again, today we have a very educated public, lot of people who take interest in what is happening in the public space. You have resident welfare associations, you have professional associations, and then you have the RTIs and the various other laws where they seek information. So people are getting involved. So there is nothing secretive. These are all public projects. Most of the time, people say that, why should we tell this group? Why should we tell that group? You don't lose anything by sharing them. And they have a right to demand that you share. If you don't give it willingly, they will force you to give it willingly. So the advantage of engaging them right from the beginning gets you a lot of buy-in and makes your work smooth. So for example, we had to do a road restoration work in a built-up area which just had 2 lanes, and that was the place where the most influential people of the town and the rich people stayed. And the reason given was, you can't block that road. Now in night times, if you have to work, how much section of the work can you do? You deploy any number of machinery, you cannot do the digging up, you cannot do the base course, you cannot do the finishing course in one night. So the work gets interrupted. And then in the night times, because they're influential and they're old in age, they had a problem with the noise machinery working. So they stopped the machinery working in the night. Then you cannot start before 5 o'clock in the morning. Then 5 o'clock in the morning, there are people who are going out for walk. So they say that we want a good environment. This is the only rest of the day. There is always pollution. Morning is nice and you're polluting that also. So we had these challenges. So what we did, we engaged the Resident Welfare Association, where there were a lot of retired chief engineers and bureaucrats and technical people. We tell them, hey guys, you tell us, how do you want us to do this work? Finally, they came up with a plan. Okay, let us do it segment to segment. Between this section and this section, that is between 2 crossroads, block the road completely, do it off. People will divert and use the next lane to go. So they issued instructions to their community that this is how it will be done, and whenever deviations are put, please respect the deviations put so that the work gets completed. It took us slightly longer because we had to do stretch by stretch. But then, because we applied the principles of agility, we involved the users, we were able to successfully complete that work without any heartburns. Everybody was happy. Small examples I can give you. The other one is, please set the expectations realistically. Most of the time, just to please ministers and MLAs and corporators, I have seen government servants give unrealistic promises. Sir, it will be done. I will do it. 3 months, 2 months, I will be done. And you know very well that monsoon is round the corner. Finish, your problems are gone. Rather than that, you should be honest in telling, we are all the professionals. We are the technical advisors. We are the ones who are actually doing the job. We know the pain points of the job. We should give the correct assessment. We should say, the monsoon is starting in the next 3 weeks. Tentatively, prediction of IMA, 6 weeks, 8 weeks, what is the intensity? We will plan our work, but then based on the weather and conditions, the rainfall conditions, all those things, it may take X amount of time. So till that, we need breathing time so that everybody is aware what is happening. You give impractical expectations, people start hounding you, and then you start refusing to pick up calls, avoid meeting people, all these challenges, routine things. Of course, you have to give the requirement. Proper documentation is very, very critical today. Contractors don't hesitate to go to court. Earlier, there was something, if you tell somebody, if the chief engineer tells the contractor, he would blindly sign and go. But then that era is gone. People are taking government departments to courts, and most of the arbitrations which I have seen personally as either as a technical counsel or as an arbitrator, is that the documentation on part of the government system is very, very poor. Nobody knows who has to do the documentation, right? Measurement sheets have to be taken. Suppose a consignment of school books or uniforms have been delivered. Who has done the checking? What was accepted? What was rejected? No documentation. And then we hold on to his payment and say that it was not up to quality. What was not up to quality? Was the fabric not up to quality? Was the stitching not done correctly? Was it not done to size? Was the color fading off? Was the color different from what we had given? You have to be very, very scrutiny. Everything will fail. And when it gets into arbitrations and courts, we are at the receiving end. So please keep that in mind. And then I think something which actually negates all your efforts in ensuring the success of your projects, a common list. But what I want to tell you is that if you have good project management practices in place, most of these things will get sorted out for you. You don't have to worry. It becomes a part of the process and people actually start. It's just a matter of time before people start adapting themselves to these new processes. There is always a resistance to change. Forget organization level, even as an individual level, if you have to change your food habits, if you have to try out new recipes, like for example, most of us today, I think we have children who are experimenting with their cooking and culinary skills, right? If you are not adaptive, we say, no, this is what I like, I don't like this. But then give it a chance, give it some time, it will change. Our dressing habits, right? Yes, I have seen people who are, very reluctant to forget printed patterns, to change from light colored shirts to dark colored shirts, right? So when that is the mindset, I'm sure at an organization level, change is not going to be easy. But the first person that has to change is you. If you start adopting good practices, if you start maintaining good documentation of the work that you do, simple thing, a work diary, what you maintain, of what all work you did, instead of just coming in and signing in the morning at 9 o'clock and leaving at 5 o'clock, if you can break down hourly basis, what you did, which file you checked, what work you did in that file, start breaking it down. I'm sure you'll start seeing how you're spending your own time. Then you can share this and enforce it with other people and demand that they do it. But then I can assure you that if you change, you can actually impact and bring influence and influence other people in your team to change. And good project management practices has answers to all the items which have been listed out here. So as good project management professionals or government servants, we had to bring in synergy between the organization, the team, and the individual. All three are important. It is not that one is super important, the other one is trivial. No, everyone has an equal role to play in the successful delivery of projects at government levels. So we are, as an individual, I'm part of a team, I'm part of the organization. So when I start thinking of what actions I should take, I should also not only think only from an individual perspective, I should also think from a team perspective and an organizational perspective. Similarly, those of you who are in the governance teams at organization levels, ministries, directorates, governance teams, you have to look at it from an individual perspective. What are the challenges that an individual face if I issue new directives, if I give these instructions? Can I do something to make it more easier for him to adapt and embrace these directions in a more proactive manner than start resisting it? If I start thinking on this line, life becomes easy for everyone. And then we become slightly more cooperative and collaborative, and then we succeed as a team, as an individual, and as a government. Otherwise, we're going to continue. And that list, what I showed you, the program and the implementation ministries and the CAG list and the arbitration list, which I showed, will continue growing. So before I wind up, just a few thoughts which I thought I'll summarize. One is, projects are the basic building blocks, whether you think of programs, portfolios, anything. If you don't get your projects right, everything else fails. So please start cultivating this habit of looking everything as a project. Everyone has a different role to play. You could be the chief engineer, you could be the secretary, you could be the director, whatever, or you could be the assistant executive engineer or the junior engineer. Everybody has a role and each one's role is different, but then that is the collective responsibility of people at different levels to orchestrate the efforts of each person and ensure that their contribution builds success. Mistakes are bound to happen. One of the good principles of project management is what we call as a lessons learned session, which we conduct at the end of the project. If mistakes happen, it's okay. Don't hesitate. You don't have to feel ashamed of it. But please share your experiences so that the next group does not commit the same mistakes, or they are at least better prepared when they encounter a similar situation as to how they can overcome that. So one of the good principles of project management is lessons learned sharing session, where everybody gets into a room. Sometimes it runs into a full day or 2-day sessions. On a major program which we have conducted, which was close to about 600 crores, the lessons learned session was for 2 days. People were more than willing to come out and share all the mistakes that they had done. And we created a huge volume of the mistakes that had happened and how to overcome that, which is feeding into the new projects which are being undertaken. So please encourage people to share mistakes, sit and listen, and especially the senior management people, you should have the tolerance to listen without victimizing that. If a person very honestly comes and admits that this was the mistake which happened, rather than trying to find shortfalls in that person's competencies or capabilities, we should look at the process groups and the gaps. What was the gap? Why didn't the organization support the team to overcome this challenge? Can I put in a mechanism where the support is ensured to the team when they go in for their work? These are the things which you have to look into. Continuous refinement and relearning is a necessity. I can give myself as an example and a lot of other people. Every year I make it a point that I should have one certification. Certification is just a benchmark of evaluating myself. But then I spend time. All the things which you have heard of in my introduction about my certifications, my educational qualifications, the papers which I write, all these things is something which happens continuously as part of my own learning process. So we have to invest time, and it's for our own good. It's not for anybody else. I improve, my performance improves. Because I'm part of a team, my team performance will automatically improve. So we have to invest time. And the golden rule of project management is plan, organize, and control. And the government of India, having realized the importance of good project management, embracing good project management practices, has started under the NITI. They had given a task to NITI Aayog, and I was also part of this group. They have created what is called the Indian Infrastructure Body of Knowledge, INBOK, something similar to the PMBOK. Only thing is this has been customized to the Indian context, whereas the PMBOK is on a global context. This is exclusive only to the infrastructure industry. This is the first step that the government has taken. There are other changes which are in the pipeline, which you will be hearing of. Now, what they have done is that they have also started a certification at 4 levels. That's the project management level, the program management, the portfolio management, and the 4th level is, I think, is the governance level or something. I don't remember that exactly, but if you go to the Niti Aayog portal, you'll see this. And they have made it mandatory going forward. Any company which has to bid for government projects should have people who are qualified in the certification programs under this Niti Aayog's infrastructure body of knowledge. Now, what does it mean to you as an administrator or a government employee who's overseeing these projects? The opposite side is getting educated. They are being tested. They are being made competent. So your opposition is going to be stronger. If you are not equipped, if you do not reskill yourself, if you do not learn and keep yourself up to date on what's happening, the opposite side, that is the contractors team, will bulldoze their way through over you. They'll keep writing 101 letters. You are not able to cope up. You don't know how to respond. And then you end up with litigations and huge cost impact because we failed on these things. That's why I kept the small point to the end, so that I just highlight the importance of understanding project management and also investing time in learning and equipping yourself to do your own projects better. This is a recent activity, and I think a couple of months back, this program was launched in one of the forums, and they're making it mandatory. It's going to be part of the pre-qualification process for contractors, that they have people who are qualified either on the global certification or on the Indian certification. But the point is that your opposition is going to become stronger than you. So you are going to deal with an intellectual and educated contractor, not the same ones who will come and listen to you and go. These people will keep asking questions. What are your plans? What are your budgets? What are your timelines? How did you arrive at this timeline? How did you calculate this BOQ? What if this changes? Have you done a detailed survey? Where is rock coming? What is the cost for excavation of rocks? What is the quantum of excavation in rocks? How much time have you given me? Have you revised your timelines for the road project or the building project because of this rocky outcrop which is coming? 100 questions I'm going to come up. The list is going to grow. So please take note of it and then equip yourself. So what I wanted to tell you was that this gentleman, Lady Joy Gomes, is a globally acknowledged project management professional, and this is what she says, that while strategy and all is fine, the government can make any number of programs. We will do this, we will do that, but then if you take the scorecard at the end of 5 years, the evaluation will finally be based on how the projects have been executed. It's only the projects which will take you from one tunnel to the other tunnel. So please get your fundamentals correct, and I'm sure you'll all do well. Thank you very much, and wish you all the best, and I'm open for questions.
Thank you, sir. The audience who want to ask questions, they can raise their hands. We will unmute you once at a time.
Yes, I think there is Vinod Vanavari.
Hello.
Yes, please.
This is Professor Vinod Vanwari from Mafatlal Polytechnic, Mumbai. Yes. I have a simple question, particularly to projects in India, both in public and private sector. Here, here the client changes the requirement in between the project.
Yes.
This has a substantial impact on the further activities. How to manage this? Any tip or guidance on this aspect?
See, there is what we call as the change management process,
Yeah.
where the impact of this change is assessed, and then a decision has to be taken
Yeah.
whether this will be accepted and included into the current project, or can I do it as a new project?
I see.
Okay, so if you can if there is no dependency, the most practical approach would be to make it as a different project so that it gets completed. But then the current one does not suffer.
Okay, sir.
Okay, so these are all fundamentals which you learn when you get into project management in detail.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next, Sri CP Nair. Sorry, I have unmuted you. Please ask the question.
Colonel Harsha, it was a fantastic presentation. Thanks for a quick run through on the project management aspects, and I appreciate you for from our side. For I don't know how many of the people are present, but from all of us. See, as far as project management in government is concerned, thanks to the ADBs and World Banks and UNs, they insist that there should be a project management unit, and that was the beginning of project management in the government sector. Since I've actually worked in the South Asian region for all these entities, I have a bit of an experience on this. So with respect to this, actually, we have got the project management logs for many of the projects. But most of the time, what happens is as the funding stops, the project management activities come to a grand halt, and nothing happens. And even I've actually come across situations where actually the project management logs have been destroyed or manipulated. So actually, it's a bit of a culture, or we require a paradigm shift on this. So with respect to you, or with respect to your experience in government projects, I mean, in private sector, actually, it has been done very well, and actually, they have reaped a lot of benefits. No doubt about that. Being a practitioner, I have also seen that. But when I've come to government, actually, things are totally different. And when there is no interest, when there is no funding coming in, actually, everything comes to a grand halt. So actually, there has to be a culture and a paradigm shift on this. So with respect to your experience, how can we get over this? How can we bring in this culture of project management and monitoring and evaluation? This is my first question. And I have a small sub question as well. Since technology is actually disrupting everything, especially with the blockchains and NFTs and related technologies coming in. So, do you really feel that the blockchains can make a lot of difference in project management, especially on tampering of this the data? Because in government sector, tampering of data always happens, and actually, if a blockchain technology comes in, you can't tamper the data. So, do you really see a future for technology? Looking forward to hear from you.
The first one is how do you ensure that project management culture mindset comes in? Probably the leader of the PMO has to become a bad boy. I think the person who heads the project management unit or the group would be senior enough to bulldoze his way through and call a spade without mincing words. And you don't have anything to lose by somebody calling you arrogant and ruthless and without manners or anything. You will have to shoulder that responsibility on behalf of your full team if you want your team to follow these principles and practices rigidly. Because one way, because of your authority, you're forcing it down the throat of your team members who have no choice but to listen to you. But at the same time, if you are not able to solicit the support of the hierarchy above you, then you fail. So you should, play the bad cop at that point of time. And then at times you may have to say that I'm going to stop this work because of these things not happening. There are times when I have insisted that the sign off is very, very essential. Even if it's a bad order, I say you give me a sign off. So I'll give you a small example. In Visakhapatnam, we had to do some demolition. Nobody wanted to take the responsibility. And every project meeting, we were getting bombarded that nothing is happening. So I said, you give me the order. They said, this has to be done by the Urban Development Authority. I said, yeah, you give that in writing. Next we will do. We went to the Urban Development Authority. That guy said, you go and do it. This is the order. We went, we got there, we got beaten up. My team got beaten up. Then we lodged a police complaint. And then the police had to intervene. And then we had a meeting with the MLA, the MP, everybody in attendance, and then things got resolved. So you have to make some sacrifices to ensure that we are able to bring in a culture of this project management in everybody's mindset. It's not easy. I fully agree with you in the government system, but then things are slowly changing now because I was part of the Visakhapatnam Smart City project and I had the privilege of working with the central ministries. People there are now completely radicalized. They're changing. They're looking at it in a project perspective. It's just a matter of time before it comes up. And this thing, what I told you about Niti Aayog, the inbox, that's the next step that has been taken where they're seriously bringing in this culture of project management at every level. The second thing about tampering of records and blockchains and all that, you see, blockchains or anything, now there are two ways of looking at it. One is ensuring that it does not get tampered at all. The other way is identifying who are the people who are tampering. We did an audit tool to audit financial records or project records of a government project under the vigilance team. And there we had permitted any number of changes. But then at the back end, we had a log of who all visited that record and what are the changes that they had done. So when records were erased, we were able to pick up the particular person rather than, staying ignorant of who the troublemakers are. A simple software based on Excel's and database structuring, this was what we had created. So we were able to pinpoint individuals who are actually tampering with the records, who are deleting records, who are changing records, who are fudging records, who are replacing and manipulating original records with false records, because we had a log at the back end. Now you had to invest time and effort and people in scrutinizing these documents, and you should have a really a person who has got an eye for detail to actually track what was happened. This was a financial irregularity audit which we had to do, and we had set up a tool and we had asked people to feed in data, and it was done in stages. And when we reached the third stage, they realized they have made a mistake in the first stage. So somebody has come and changed the document, but then because we had the log and we also knew whose login had been used, we were able to call that fellow and then drill him further to find out why this was done. So we were able to dive deep into the problem and resolve the problem. So there we found out that if it was a genuine issue, the person was not victimized. He was just left off with a warning that it should have been brought to the next level. But people who had done it intentionally with malified intentions, we were able to segregate the bad eggs from the good ones. And I have to appreciate of this activity where we segregated the good eggs and the bad eggs. And then more stories started coming out for us to actually set the system right. So the intent there was to set the system right and not to penalize people. That was the confidence and the messaging which we were able to give. Now the blockchain, I have nothing against blockchain and all that, but then it's a very cumbersome process and the back end becomes very heavy. The amount you have to spend in maintaining these highly skilled people, getting authorizations, buying licenses, whole lot of issues come into play which the government will not approve. That's my take on this. I hope I was able to convince you to some extent, Mr. Nair.
Yes, Colonel. Thank you very much. Really appreciate your time and the way you have put things in a very simple fashion for us. Really appreciate. And also the entire team who have been coordinating this and getting things done from the Kerala Highway Research Institute as well. Congratulations and thanks once again.
Thank you. And I think Sri Devi has a question on how is quality ensured in government projects. Do we have some time, Krishnan? I hope we are not overshot our time.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Okay, good. So you see, there is a quality standards and templates and norms which have been defined. One, the other one is in the contracts and technical standards. The quality parameters are defined. Now the question is, when do you check and how do you check? That is where the good project management practices come into play, that as part of quality, what are the activities that need to be done, which gets included in the scope of the project. Now, the point here you have to notice that the scope of the project is not restricted only to what the contractor has to do by means of a contract. It also includes what all we have to do as government servants to ensure that the project is completed in all aspects. So if I have to do quality checks, I should prepare a quality check schedule. I have to assign resources. I have to give them time to do that. I have to coordinate with the site people or wherever. So for example, if it's supply of materials, how do I check the materials? What all needs to be done? What all can be checked at the site? What all needs to be checked at the manufacturer's venue, because he's got the required infrastructure in terms of equipment, people to conduct those. All these things need to be planned and put into the project management plan. And then it needs to be ticked off. And then you also have random checking, which can be done by the next level. So you should have hierarchical quality checks, people who execute, then visiting people, and then senior decision makers or the governance team members when they come to the project site. You can actually ask them to come and inspect a couple of quality checks so that the quality issues are certified as checked, verified, and closed. So there are mechanisms, and these good project management practices will actually throw light into that, right? I hope that's okay. Sridevi? Okay, any other questions?
Sir, Bala Sahib sir has raised a question hand. I am unmuting him now.
Please.
Sir, please ask. Bala Sahib sir, please ask the question. I have unmuted you.
Sir, this is good afternoon. This is regarding regulatory body approvals. In particular states, peoples are not, government peoples particularly, taking the plea of Corona, and they are not acting actively. And we have seen that particularly environmental clearance and other, they are lagging. They are not completing on time their work. And because of that, that RTI fellows are misusing the RTI and delaying the project. How to overcome this, sir, in government project particularly?
Well, that is where the governance team, that is the next level of management levels, have to be roped in. You will have to escalate this to the next level, could be your director or the secretary of your directorate or your department, and tell them to intervene with the environmental secretary to ensure that this thing happens. And the second thing is, if you saw in my final thoughts, I had put plan, organize, and control. As part of control process, your schedule has to get revised. So there is a dependency of external environmental clearance. So the activities which need to be done after the clearance have to be put on hold, and you have to revisit the timelines for that. Don't stick to the original project schedule.
Yes, sir.
Okay. But then that has to be communicated to everybody up the line that because of this, this part of the work has been rescheduled, and we will require 30 days after the environmental clearance is given. So irrespective of when the environmental clearance is given, it could be on the 28th of February or on the 10th of March. After that, I need 30 days. Your role ends there. So the RTI person also knows that, Kibai, don't ask me questions, you get me environmental clearance. In 30 days, I will complete the work. That's how this whole system works.
Okay, sir. Okay. Thank you, sir.
Yes, and I think I saw one question from Vivek saying, can government along with training, so make some trainings or systems compulsory for the contractors? Yes, you can make it compulsory as part of the, but then I think at the government level itself, Niti Aayog is taking this initiative. But however, even at state government levels, you can make it compulsory for people to undergo some basic training to understand your own requirements of documentation, processes, documents and forms which have to be submitted for the finance and accounting department. So these things can be done. So any other questions?
Sir, there is a question. Just a second. So one of our participants want to know about the softwares which can be used in project management. Is there any particular softwares? What are the software tools which can be used in for effective project management?
There are close to about 300 different formats of software management tools which are available. The most prominent ones or well-known ones in the market are the Primavera, which is an Oracle-based tool, and the other one is MS Projects, which is a Microsoft-based tool, and these are slightly expensive because they charge the implementation costs and then the cloud costs and all that. But otherwise, as part of your MS Office package, there is one what you call tool which is called as MS Access. I don't know how many of you have actually explored your MS Office package completely. There is one called MS Access. That can be a very basic tool, but then it is sufficient for you to keep track of your project. But otherwise, there are various tools which are available in the market. Only thing is, you'll have to negotiate your pricing to see what exactly you need and get it customized to your own organizational requirements. Right? Otherwise, the predominant ones are Primavera and MSP, what we call as MS Projects.
Thank you. Next, I have Indranil. Sir, please ask the question.
Yeah, thanks a lot, sir, for a wonderful presentation. First, congratulate you to kind of bring this topic, which is very important and core to a good project management, both within government and also the public sector. My question here is that in this last 2 years of COVID, I think a lot of remote technology has been involved in terms of project management. So just wanted to kind of understand how this can be still applied in a post-COVID scenario, and how effective this has been so far, and from our experience globally or in an India perspective. Can we think that this is something which is going to stay for us, or it was only an interim measure?
Well, I think in the IT related sector where human intervention is very, very minimal, this is going to stay. They have found the advantages of working from home and remote delivery because of the network. The infrastructure at a national level and at a global level has grown phenomenally, and a lot of investments have been made in improving the capacity of the infrastructure. So everything can be done remotely, including setting your computer right and accessing your tools and all that. But then for the manufacturing sector and the construction sector and a couple of other places, say education and all, where the physical presence is critical, I think we are going to get back to physical mode. Even in the schooling and college, this thing, the feedback from all stakeholders, students, faculties, parents, everything is that the physical interaction is much more effective than the online interaction. So some of them are going to get back. Even medicinal things, certain things, though they have got into telemedicine and all that, the physical thing is going to stay. It's going to come back. It's just a question of time before it bounces back. The other one is, as far as the technology goes, yes, technology is there. It's just an enabler. The question is, are we prepared to adopt this and embrace this? Is the big question. So far, in that extent, organizations have to look at capacity building to make people more technology savvy. And again, when it comes to technology, it is not necessary that you have to adopt the latest and the current. You have to see what is the one that actually fits you. It's like, choosing a shoes. A Nike shoes, though it's good, costly and looks nice and all that, may not be good for cross-country walking. For cross-country walking, you'll have to go back to the rubberized, what we call as in the military, the DMS shoes or the jungle shoes. So you'll have to see what technology suits you and take it. But then yes, technology as an enabler has always been critical in enhancing the efficiencies and the performance of teams. So that's all that I can say for the moment. But COVID has brought in a lot of changes in behavior, and people are now more willing to embrace change, which was not there earlier. So even older generation people have started embracing technology. Right? I hope
Thanks,
that
sir.
gives you some convincing answer. But
Thank you,
yes,
sir.
time,
Yeah.
yes, but it's only time which will.
See
tell.
the other, sir, I just wanted to kind of have a follow-up on this. In terms of like the other burning question is in terms of, as you know, the other speaker was also asking, that how you bring this element of change and project management, professional project management within the government systems. So what would be the quick solution to this? Although Kerala has been doing very well in this, but there are many other states where we find that there are challenges in terms of probably because of the lack of exposure of managing projects in the way a corporate sector would do. So what would be the quick fix solution? This has to got to do with the legacy issues, organizational issues. You mentioned about the top person being a champion, driving things down the entire organization. But these are not very easy to do. Have you any experience in this kind of things done in any states which has worked very favorably? So if you can cite some examples on that. Yeah.
Well, yes, in Karnataka, we were lucky to have one gentleman, Mr. Devi Prasad, who was part of the World Bank. He was from the Indian Economic Service, and he was here as a director in the finance department. So in 2009, since 2009, I had the privilege of working with this institution. He set up a body which is called the Fiscal Policy Institute, FISCA, Fiscal Policy, where he looked at improving the financial performance or the ROI of every rupee spent by the government. And in that context, he said project management is critical. So I have been part of a task force since 2009 here in the government of Karnataka, where we develop the content, customize that to different departments to meet their requirements. The same philosophies, how it translates into a different form for the forest department, for the education department, for the finance department, which is initiating a changeover of a new software, which they call as Khazana 1 and then now Khazana 2. And then, the public works department, like that. So they conduct workshops in forms of capacity conducting. We conduct about 4 to 5 workshops every year for government officials at all levels here in this institute. It's a institute, it's got about 10 classrooms and 5 audio-visual rooms and 4 conferences rooms, meeting rooms where you can have small group discussions and presentations. So like that, they have set up a good capacity, and it's been performing very well since 2011. And I am a faculty there where I go, and just because I've been part of the government system and then I've been now with the corporate, I feel I should share my experience with the government people and try to make them more professional and educate them. So I take work off from my professional commitments and come and share my experiences and thoughts. And the feedbacks which I have received are quite encouraging. And after the workshop, I have a lot of people who come back to me and ask for suggestions and recommendations and discuss their daily functional issues with me to improve their own functioning. Right. And I also help them in scrutinizing their project documents, reviewing their arbitration matters where they have disputes. So I keep doing this. So close to about 14, 15 years of experience in capacity building enhancement activities is what I have with me when I am actually speaking with you. But yes, it has to be driven from the top, and somebody has to take ownership of doing this capacity enhancement.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you, sir. So one more question is from the audience is what are the resources from where we can learn more about project management?
One is if you go to this website, www.pmi.org, you will find a lot of free resources, or there is another site called projectmanagement.com. There again, you'll find a lot of resources available for you to read, download. Templates are available. So you'll find all of them. And these are all again by a global community of practicing project management professionals who are enthusiastic and keen to share their experiences and knowledges. You can contact them, share your views, opinions, questions, and you'll get answers from them, and you can interact with them. Okay.
Okay, thank you, sir. Any more questions? Please raise the hand.
Okay, I think there is nothing. So you can take my contact address, and if there's anything, feel free to contact me or drop a mail. Only disclaimer, what I would like to put is I operate in remote areas. So if I don't answer your phone, please chase me, drop a message, drop a mail, and you'll definitely get a response. Don't consider not answering your call as trying to avoid you, because those are restrictions or limitations I will have.
Sir, one more question has come up. If can I ask?
Yeah, please.
It's like they want to, like, these days whenever the project manager opportunities are published, it already demands 4 to 5 years of experience. So can you please suggest from where freshers can begin their project management journey and gain experience?
See, the basic thing is when they ask for experience, it's not that you have to be a project manager. It's a question of how you look at your activity as a project. Now, if you look at the definition of a project, what is it? It's a temporary endeavor undertaken to create a unique product, result, or service. So with that interpretation, your effort, what you have spent today to attend this webinar, is also a project. Why? Because you have spent 2 hours to listen to me to gain knowledge of project management. So in that context, if you start analyzing your work, the professional work that you are doing, you have rich experience. It's just that you haven't explored it from that perspective. Today, if you are all sitting here for 2 hours, I'm sure you had to make alternate arrangements back at your office so that they don't trouble you when you are here in the session. So you defined a scope for yourself of making alternate arrangements. You did risk mitigation. You did some time planning. You allotted some resources and you integrated everything. Right? For me, this talk had to be customized to you. It could not be a very generic project management topic. So this was a project for me by itself. Now this project for me was about 15-20 hours, because I had to collect my thoughts. I had to define what needs to be included in this, what needs to be told in that 1 hour, 10 minutes, how much should I tell, I have to practice, these things. So that's how you look at it. So if you look at it that way, if you look at your own work and try to fit it within the definition of what is called project, I'm sure you have rich experience. The only thing is now, how have you applied these principles of project management? You should have at least a basic understanding of these principles of project management. And for beginners, PMI has a certification, and they also have small bit size study material and certifications. So they have a scope certificate, they have a time certificate, otherwise associate project management professional certification, which is for freshers who have a basic graduation. So you can just go there, attend a small training, take up that exam, then you'll get an in-depth understanding of what project management is all about. And see, basically, it's about the confidence that you display in managing a challenging situation. That is all. The challenging situation is a project, and how are you going to manage it? You should be open-minded to answer questions when you go for your interview, and I'm sure you will succeed. Not a big deal. Don't worry about it. Just look at it from this perspective.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Krishna, I think we can conclude.
Yes. I think, sir, with this, I think our question answer session is also coming to an end. I hope there are more and no other questions from the audience side.
Thank you very much for a patient hearing, and I enjoyed sharing my experience with all of you.
Thank you, sir. I take this opportunity to formally thank you for coming on such a short notice for our webinar session. And yes, as our CE Design Madam has said in the initial welcome address, this will just be a beginning of our webinar sessions on project management topic. We also would like to explore more on this topic, in-depth analysis details, and how this can be taken forward. So there will be further sessions that will be coming up, follow-up sessions on this. Anyway, this was a really wonderful session. Standalone, I should say, this is also a wonderful session. It was really thought-provoking and gave deep insights on how project management should be taken in our daily life, in our work life, in the government projects and everything that we do. How it brings in the context setting was amazing. Something that took us into the subject really deep. Like how the things, cost runs, time overruns, everything comes when it comes to bad management of the project. And also something new that I came across in this is the portfolio and the programs management that comes above, how the project over and above project management, how portfolios and programs are also established. Those kind of things are a new area for me as well. I have not seen much in detail in any other sessions like this. So with this, I would formally, I would like to thank Lieutenant Colonel Retired Sri Harsha sir for giving us such a wonderful session. And I also congratulate each and every participant who took 2 hours of their busy schedule time, since today being a working day as well. So I also sincerely thank everyone for attending this program. And I also thank our Chief Engineer, Paidability Design Hygiene Madam, for giving us this opportunity to conduct webinars. So I thank each and every one of you and hope you have a great and wonderful day. Thank you.